All right, so let's talk about ServiceNow and Akamai. What are some of the value outcomes that you can unlock with our partnership? I'm Andy Oja. I'm one of our product managers here at ServiceNow, and I focus on our SecOps, vulnerability response, attack surface management capabilities. And today we're going to look at our partnership with Akamai. And let's start off with ServiceNow. So ServiceNow is the AI platform for the enterprise. So today we're talking about security operations, but you've likely heard of ServiceNow for other workflows, core IT service management, CRM, HR, and so forth. And what powers our workflows today? We're heavily relying on AI agents, agentic AI workflows. We're leveraging our underlying data fabric to connect all these parts of the business together. And specifically today, we're going to get into security operations. So today, as we look at our attack surface across the enterprise, we know that we're overwhelmed, right? We have a lot of use cases. Leadership is coming to us. What are we doing about our exposures that we're finding? How are we doing with regards to compliance? Are we sinking? Are we swimming? What are we doing with our risk management, our incidents that are happening in the SOC? And we know that over time, the volume of these exposures, these incidents that we're dealing with is growing over time. We also know that we have increased attack surface, more applications across the enterprise, additional API endpoints across the enterprise, and evolving needs for the enterprise. So today, our integrations with ServiceNow and Akamai, number one starts off at visibility. So being able to have insight into my applications and what APIs we have across the enterprise, and think of that as enriching our CMDB. So we can start to stitch together what APIs we have exposed, what APIs are being used across integrations, and what that means for the business. The next integration that we have with ServiceNow and Akamai is with the Guardicore integration. So we can enrich the CMDB with our network segmentation overlay. We can start to see perhaps what applications are part of production, what applications are part of sub-production, and how does that commingle with the CMDB data. And from there, we then get visibility from Akamai around the API exposures. So think about OWASP, top 10, API security threats. We can get visibility into those types of exposures, bring that into ServiceNow, and then start to initiate the remediation workflow, the mobilization workflow. So once Akamai has presented some of these exposures on those APIs, we can then start to kick off correlating that with the application and the CMDB. And what does that mean? We can start to use that data to prioritize what should we address first, what should we remediate first, and what teams do we need to interact with. And across that mobilization, that remediation workflow, ServiceNow is using AI across all of those means. So number one is we get the asset data from Akamai, and again, the Guardicore, the segmentation, the API visibility, we're enriching the CMDB, and then we can start to look at the exposures that we're getting insight into. We can start to normalize that, so all those exposures across our footprint, our applications, and then we want to make sure that as we present this to the remediation teams, we're prioritizing that. And we don't just want to be creating thousands of tickets, hundreds of thousands of tickets, and overwhelming these teams. We want to strategically group all those exposures into units of work. And those are prioritized, packaged up, and assigned to the remediation teams in ServiceNow. And next, as we start to assign those exposures to the team, we want to monitor the progress. Are we sinking? Are we swimming? Are we identifying more exposures than teams are actually acknowledging or addressing? Here's an illustration of the agentic AI workflows that we have in ServiceNow. So a couple of them here on the right side. So number one, our CISA Kev exposure agent. So as new vulnerabilities are announced, as new vulnerabilities are published on the CISA exploitable catalog, we can kick off, in ServiceNow, we call it a watch topic, but think of that as a mini project. So we can say, hey, here's a new vulnerability, it's on CISA Kev, are we impacted? Let's start to take mobilization, let's create an action plan and work with the remediation teams. The next is our vulnerability exposure AI agent. So think of that as your best friend for saying, where am I impacted? A new vulnerability has come out. It's it's in the news. My manager's asking me about it. Where are we impacted? So what? Are we impacted on a crown jewel application? Are we impacted on a sub-production system, and so forth? And the next is being able to take action. As I mentioned, we have a concept of the watch topic. That is really the initiation of the remediation activities, the mobilization. Let's start to package this up and assign it to the remediation teams. And our most recent AI agent in vulnerability response is our remediation compliance. So think of that as saying, what teams are doing the best? What teams are mitigating the exposures we've assigned to them? Or maybe the opposite, the wall of shame. What teams are not keeping up? What teams are missing their SLA dates? Where do we need to make some changes in our processes? So with ServiceNow and Akamai, we have the ServiceNow store, and the ServiceNow store is where you get access to all the applications and the integrations that we have. And the integrations that we've talked about here today, again, number one, visibility and asset context, enriching the CMDB. And we do that with the Guardicore segmentation. And next is the API visibility. And last is going to be on the exposure side. So being able to bring in those exposures of API weaknesses into ServiceNow SecOps, these are all accessible from the ServiceNow store. Thank you.
Thank you.